Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now.
Right now I've got approximately 500 people staring at an empty desk in Seattle, Washington, where I'm from. And I'm going to do my best to set this little camera up on me. I don't know how well it's going to work, but I'm going to attempt to live stream this. All I need is an internet connection.
I'm going to leave it to you, man.
Thank you, Paul. If I can do this right. Oh, and by the way, well, when you see the laptop, I don't know if it's going to come up after I put the screen. I guess not. I've got to plug. Oh, it's in? Okay. There we go. I use an application called Desktoptopia. It changes the wallpaper on certain frequencies. It's a piece of freeware. So I don't know what this wallpaper is, some kind of metallic Swiss cheese, I guess. And what I'm going to do real quick, I guess I'll show you the setup. It's not that difficult. I've got a Logitech, I believe it's the 9000 or the Pro, where everything's controlled in hardware, connected, wide-angle lens and whatnot. I'm going to open up Safari. Oh, wait. I guess I need to get to my connectivity here. What I can do. I'm trying to think of another way around it here. I'm just using a Sprint connection by USB. Works well enough. I wasn't exactly sure how much setup time I'd have, but this works out very, very well, I would say. And so long as I have a signal. Oh, yay. It's kind of been touch and go here. Okay, we'll pull up Safari again. It's okay. I've got my own. Launching the broadcast mechanism. I may have to hit refresh. Yep, I do. Ustream.tv is a free service that anybody can use, web-based, where you can broadcast anything, audio and or video. And so now it's going to ask me if I want to restart my prior stream when I'm done, and yes, I do. That's the home office back up in Seattle, Washington. And now I'm going to check my video source. Oh, yay, it's me. Whee! Although it's a little crooked, that's okay. Let's see if we can get it straight. That'll kind of work, I guess. And 488 people are currently watching it. Look at my VU meter. It's actually getting audio from the Logitech webcam. Let me try the internal microphone. Test. Yeah, that'll work, I think. Never really sure until you hear from the other end. Go ahead and launch into my Keynote presentation. So thank you, Paul, for the introduction. It's kind of weird. Everybody's kind of spread out. That's cool. To provide a little bit of perspective, I've been a geek most of my life, and I'm now 35 years old, and I can say that most of my life I was a Windows user. I'm sorry. But don't worry. Obviously, I've seen a better path, and it's taken a while. In fact, it took 3 things for me to really throw myself deeper into this community. 3 things. First thing, Apple switching to the Intel platform. Second thing was Leopard, and the third thing was Vista. The truth. In fact, I was I guess you could say someone who really championed the idea of software on the Windows platform. Community leader, writing a lot about hardware and software, primarily that related to Windows. And when Vista Beta 2 started to ship out, I had the luck to meet Jim Alchin in person at a kind of like a blogger roundtable. And he said, well, give me your feedback. Tell me what you think. And I did. And I think the post Windows Vista beta feedback, or Windows Vista feedback, had a list of like 100 or so, my issues with Vista. Like, why did you use Tahoma, Times New Roman, and MS Sans Serif in the same window? Like, why? Pointing out those small things, and I was kind of cast out from the Windows community because they said, well, who cares? Well, I do. I care. And long story short with that, one of my prized possessions is now a CD, or I guess a DVD, of Windows Vista Beta 2 autographed by Jim Alchin, under which he wrote, "I'm sorry." Very true. In a traditional internet construct, or I suppose even further back, I mean in a traditional community construct, we have these various layers to ourselves. And it's everywhere, this idea of community, the idea of belonging. And more importantly, it's inside you. You are a walking Venn diagram. Hopefully, you understand what a Venn diagram is. Think about it as these circles that sometimes intersect with one another. And you are a part of all these various communities. So you may belong to, it depends on where you're from. I'm from Seattle, so I belong to the Seattle community, but I'm also someone who is now a Mac user, so I cross over there so that there are other people in the middle that also live in Seattle in the Mac community. And then there may be another layer in there, people who also own a Tenorion or some other piece of hardware, but the idea of community intersects and it flows between. This idea, it goes with you, which is kind of an odd thing to think about, because the way the internet's set up, they're like set up in silos, where you have to say that you're someone's friend on this website, and then again on this website, and again on this website. It's very unintuitive, very non-user centric, the idea of community. Oops, let's try it again. What's kicking me out? Do this. Try it again. So it's already there inside everybody. Now this is, I guess, a revelation that I had a while ago when I originally read the Clue Train Manifesto, which is still available. Great read, quick read. Just go to cluetrain.com. Written by Doc Searles, David Weinberger, Chris Locke, and I believe Eric Levine. The idea that markets are conversations. Well, given the news that Apple will no longer be participating in Macworld, it's kind of not about them. I mean, it is, this idea. I mean, obviously it's their baby, but now we kind of have a part of that in ourselves, and that's a part of the culture. Not necessarily about the company. And in hearing the scuttlebutt on the show floor, some people, are disappointed in this news. I don't know how surprised I am, but to me, it's less about the company and more about the culture, the people you connect with. And hopefully, you've made some pretty good connections at Macworld. Have you? Just assuming. That's one of my favorite parts of going to these types of events. In fact, if given a choice between a Macworld type event, where I know I'm going to share a common bond, a thread between other people here or not, I would choose that, because this is one of those conferences that you kind of know that the people who are here actually want to be here, rather than being told they have to go there. Doesn't matter how big a trade show floor is. It's all about the value of the connections that you make with people, whether it's online, offline. And that's very, very community-centric. Not about, again, to put it in perspective, not necessarily so much about Apple, but the culture that it's now given to us. It's been bestowed upon us. This idea of community online, used to exist, really, and as I said, in silos, but those walls are starting to be broken down. The idea of being able to connect with one person on one website and know that you're going to be able to connect with them everywhere else. Anybody on Twitter? Heard of Twitter? You tweet? I don't know about that word. I still don't know about that word. There are people who know me, and there are a lot of people who don't know me. That's fine. And the people who do know me don't necessarily have to know me through a certain website. They don't have to go to website XYZ to get to know me. I bring that community with me. So if I'm on Twitter, friend feed, Facebook, MySpace, if I know someone here, well, they're as much of a friend or a connection over here. Community is no longer existing in this one place. Now, granted, Facebook, huge user base. MySpace, huge. Different kind of audience. But it's no longer in one spot. It's everywhere. Omnipresent. You bring those relationships with you, whether you're visiting another website or whether you're actually meeting people in person in meet space, physical meet. I know I don't have much on me. Probably set the white balance to my arm, as a matter of fact. I get a lot of questions. Having built various online communities over the years, or just having them kind of spring up around the things that I would do, people would ask, what do you use? It's difficult to pinpoint. Community isn't something that you just create from something that you install or say, well, we're going to have a community. What? Community doesn't happen that way. It doesn't. And the best community tools are the ones that can't be built. Community exists here, in your heart. And from there it extends. From your heart it goes to your mind, your mouth, potentially your fingers, depending on how you're communicating. But the idea of putting something in front of a group of people and expecting that it's going to happen is just, it's asinine to believe that. And I've known plenty of people who say, well, we started a forum, but nobody came. Well, gee, it's not like, you've got the only forum on the internet that's related to whatever. So what is it that makes the community happen? Well, again, it's all about what's in here, in your heart. And you take that with you wherever you go. There are places, plenty of places you can go to connect with people. Plenty. I mean, the internet's full of how many billions of web pages? Most of them suck, but, right? Okay, maybe I'm wrong. It's difficult to get feedback because I can't see everybody's faces. I'm very visual, and I got these bright lights, like I'm on I guess I am on stage. So these websites out there, these communities, they're a commodity because when one falls off, another one's going to spring up in its place. Usually, right? Something goes away, something else comes in. Same thing with let's take for example, peer-to-peer networks. They go after one network, 3 more spring up in their place. Same thing with communities. So when one community starts to trail off, and the idea of community will ebb and flow. It's just the natural progression of community. Always has been. Sometimes there will be highs, sometimes there will be lows. But people, the heart, that's something that transcends any tool. That's something you take with you. That's something you can take to another place. You can exist in this circle, and you can exist in this circle, and you can exist in this circle. And if one circle goes away, another one will come up. You're still being served. And when your needs aren't being served in a community, in connecting with other people, what happens? Well, either you pick up the ball and you run with it, potentially on your own, potentially with friends, and sometimes you have to pick up that ball and you have to play the little red hen. Are you familiar with that story? She wants to make some cornbread. She said, who wants to help me? I gotta plant the seeds. And all the animals go, well, not me, I'm too busy. Oh, no, I can't do it. Until, of course, she goes all the way through, and something beautiful has been created. And the people who are Johnny-come-latelys into it don't really have the opportunity to take advantage of the fruits of the Little Red Hen's labors. Community works the same way. But, of course, it's an ongoing process. I get a lot of, as I said, questions about community, especially from companies, and sometimes individuals too. Well, what happens if they say bad things? Oh, it's going to happen. That's a given. Well, do we, PR agency, do we put spin on it? Like, no. No. You address it head on. You let it happen. You can't control that community. You can guide it. You can kind of let it go along, push it along, nudge it along, give it help when it needs to, water it, feed it. But when you start controlling it and you exert too much control, it's restrictive. Community, it's organic. It starts here. And it could start on, around an event, around a product, a brand. Potentially, and as it used to be, a community would start specifically in a locality. And many of you likely have experienced something that I have. This is this weird little feeling that I get when I'm communicating with a friend in Ireland over a utility called Pirillo. It's a utility that some gamers use to communicate low latency, high quality. Instead of using Skype to communicate with friends in an ad hoc manner, I use Pirillo. Cross-platform too. This feeling that I get when I know I have more in common with someone who lives halfway across the globe than I do with my next door neighbor. That's a community. What kind of community? I couldn't necessarily define. But I'm a part of something that I can't quite put my finger on. But it's strange. That's something new. You have something more in common with people who aren't in your vicinity. But you still feel very tied into them. You share something in common, an interest. You share a passion, a hobby. It's interesting to me when people who begin to explore the idea of community, either creating one, a website with a series of tools, looking for leadership right up front. And it's good to have, the figurehead. You need someone who's going to get things going and always be responsible for various things inside the community. But I've found over and over again, leadership will come forward. It will just come forward. It will just happen naturally. There's no rule written about this. The best leaders are the ones that spring out of the community because they have a pride. What's in their heart is translated. They have a pride. They protect their space. They become known inside the community. Passionate, and they care. They weren't necessarily asked to lead. They just became that way. And yes, some people power trip. It's a given. But having a leadership title bestowed upon you inside a community without really having done anything for it doesn't quite work. It's a little disingenuous, that particular title, unless you have the credibility of everybody else inside your community. And again, that too ebbs and flows. A forum is a tool. A blog is a tool. Mailing list, it's a tool. Me, I'm a tool. Just seeing if anybody's listening. Hope you were. It's interesting when I hear people say, well, I have a blog and it's got a community. And that can happen. There can be a massive amount of followers. I mean, there are plenty of Mac bloggers who have a following, a massive following that transcends their blog. Conversations happen everywhere. So they may write about something in their blog, and then people are talking about it on Twitter, and then it extends into something else, and it grows from there. But the idea of community is really removed from that idea of self. Because am I a community? Well, sometimes, if I'm talking to myself, which I probably would be, so I'm very grateful that all of you showed up. But the idea of community is the antithesis of self, of ego. It's potentially sharing self with others, and potentially giving tools to others so that they too can collaborate, so that they too can share. One thing that's always excited me about doing what I do, and it's very difficult to nail down exactly what I do, but the thing that drives me forward is a passion for software and hardware. I take pride in being a geek and calling myself that because I enjoy it. And that passion translates. I find out about really cool software, really cool hardware, and I tell people about it. I mean, what's the use of finding something that you know and that you love and being in front of other people who potentially may want to know or want to love it and then not sharing it? It doesn't work for me. I have to share. I have to communicate. That's where, when I'm able to talk about things that other people are doing, that's where my ego is removed and my passion springs forward. And then that passion is shared and passed on and passed on and passed on and passed on in any community. And I forgot to tell you in the beginning, I'm Italian, so I use my hands a lot. Not that you hadn't figured that out by now. I debated on whether or not to put this slide in here, but I believe it's apropos. And I do hope you understand why I put this slide in here, because I believe it. I absolutely believe it. I have certainly enjoyed walking the show floor and walking up to developers who I believe are rock stars, as someone who can't program, as someone who's a user, who wants to do things, and I don't have that mouthpiece, and the developers are my mouthpiece, to communicate to them, even if they have a free product. There are 3 kids just fresh out of high school over in the North Hall. They have a product called Tubal, free program I've used before, shared with other people. Check it out. It'll search YouTube. It can help you even manage certain parts of your YouTube account and synchronize YouTube videos to your iPod. Free program. So I saw these 3 kids standing there, and they had this blue piece of construction paper with like chicken scratch and Sharpie saying the best thing at Macworld because it's free. And they were so happy. They were elated. Possibly that I was paying attention to them, I don't know. But they were just happy to be there. And it was enough validation for me to say thank you to them. Is that something Apple's going to care about? Potentially. But it means more to me to make that connection with them as someone who uses Mac OS X and relies on them to create things that I can use. That, well, to use a Microsoft phrase, ecosystem, it's very, very reliant on feedback. And I do believe that this type of event is needed more by the community than by Apple, for that reason alone. And to get back from the very beginning, community is where you make it happen. Sometimes it's planned, sometimes it's serendipity, just falling into it. Those discoveries you make when you open up and you communicate and you are yourself and you share your passions and you find other people who share your passions or share your thinking or ideas. Sometimes you follow someone else's leadership and sometimes that leadership is kind of thrust upon you. Either way, I think what I wanted to present today, and like I said, especially given the news, in talking to a friend last night, he said something in light of, is there going to be another Macworld? Yes. He said, you know, my father used to tell me it's easier to tear down a barn than it is to raise it. I think, well, certainly the death of this community has been greatly exaggerated. But that community is something that each one of you carries inside. You carry it with you, no matter which bubble you exist in. I really have nothing else to say. If you want to find me on the web, just Google Chris. And thank you for your attention. Thank you for letting me into your community.